You know what I wish I every time.
My favorite's alumni slow.
For show.
Yeah, most of the team helping on Kurtz.
Oh, it's fun. No, that's good. Okay. He's got a bunch of stuff. That's my list. Yeah. Hard. Hey, Rick. Good to see you. Yeah. Clear.
Just about got 2 o'clock before we start class. We're gonna get attendance going. We've got Linda and David Kurtz, my Graham and Pat. We here. Very good. We got David Miller, my uncle. He's here. We've got the 2022 cohort friends and supporters. Brody Coolidge and Riles and Thomas. Are we here? All right, very good. We've also got a friend, mentor, and supporter, Rick Whitmer. He's here. Okay. The whole way from Kentucky State visiting. We've got Audie and Tori Cherry, y'all here. All right, very good. We've got a wonderful sister, Ariana Ripple. She's here. We've got a beautiful mother, Christine Kurtz. She is here. And we've got some grad students, Kendra Flood and Jessica. They're also here. Very good. Penn State TCHAG faculty and staff. Are you here?
Here.
Okay, they're here. Wonderful. And Dr. Tracy Hoover. She here as well. Very good. Wonderful. Thank you. We've got Jenna. She's here as well. An excellent mentor. Definitely a guiding force in my life. So thank you for being here. And we've got friend supporter Nick Bastion. It sounds like he's here as well. Wonderful. Looks like the class is all here. Let's get started. Today we're going to talk about. Oh, one sec. You know how teaching goes. There we go. Today we're going to talk about Mr. Kurtz, me as a teacher. And
Keep going.
Here we go. We're going to get this working here. Teachers are flexible, sometimes physically, sometimes mentally, sometimes both. All right, but yeah, today we're going to talk about where I plan to go and so forth. Today's learning objectives. We've got where I'm going, what I've done in the past 4 years here at Penn State TCHAG, and who I will be as a teacher, right? So first, I want to tell you about where I'm going. I'll be going to the Big Spring High School, which is in Newville, Pennsylvania. My cooperating teacher will be Mrs. Sharisa Naylor and Mrs. Sarah Beth Fulton. And it's a really great program, and mostly because I've got 2 highly qualified educators that I'm going to be learning from. They have strong partnerships within the community, and they also have excellent learning facilities. If you see here, we've got students that are, obviously interested and intrigued by the lab work that they're doing. We do like tractor safety and so forth in the backyard or in the parking lot. So it's an excellent ag ed program that I'm definitely excited to go teach at because I'm going to learn a lot there. I'll be a teacher, but I'll also be a student, which is really cool. That's why they call it student teaching. So next, what am I teaching? I'll be teaching these 6 classes and then also observing / kind of jumping in on a 7th class, food safety. In science, I'll be teaching basic leadership. So I'll be teaching students skills such as like, how do you speak in front of an audience or how do you even make a lesson plan? I'm going to be teaching that as well because I want to filter some more students into the profession of being teachers. Equine science, that's something that I'm not super comfortable with, but actually now that I've been writing coursework for this, I'm very excited to teach equine science. I'm excited to teach something new. I'm excited to teach about hands and leg and face markings. These are all things that if you're not a horse person, you don't know about it, but I'd love to teach you sometime. Small animal science, and that's like it sounds, working with pets and so forth. I've got a unit there about dogs, got a unit about cats, that kind of thing. Plant and greenhouse. Now this is my forte because I love plants. My mother, she doesn't really have a green thumb, but I picked up a green thumb somewhere along the line. So there I'll be teaching about like propagation, that kind of thing. Small gas engines. Be working with, this is something that I'm kind of comfortable with. And kind of something that I want to say is that a lot of times as future teachers, we say, oh, small gas engines, ag mechanics, that's not my forte. I don't know if I want to go into a program that does that. Well, the way I see it though is that is some kids' forte. And so I want to make sure that I am well-versed in this area and well-versed and able to teach it, because just because I'm not into it doesn't mean that one of my students won't be into it as well, right? And lastly, essential home projects, another class that I'm very excited about. This is where I get to teach students like things that they're going to be able to take home, like how to use drywall and so forth. Next, there's got to be a method to my organization madness, and by organization madness, I mean all my lesson and unit plans. If you check out here, indicated by the picture of the horse, that is my unit and lesson plans for equine science. If you look on the back of your flyer, there's a QR code for teaching documents. If you scan that QR code, it'll take you to all my unit and lesson plans, my bell schedule and all that good stuff. And then I've also got all of those, which is what you would be seeing, is my Google Drive file management system, which is honestly, this is a plug for Google. As any educator, Google definitely works well with education, and especially with this organization. The taxonomic system that you can go through to kind of order your units and lessons is really phenomenal. My strengths as a teacher. I think this is really important, especially as a student teacher. There's a lot of times I think that from talking to folks that are older and wiser than myself, I hear that a lot of young bucks and does like me will come out of school thinking that we know what we're doing. But the thing is that I don't know what I'm doing. And I'm okay to say that. I've got a good foundation, but I'm ready to grow upon that. And so I want to say that I'm ready for criticism. I'm not ready to get flamed after each class, right? But I am ready for someone to say, hey, Justin, I think you could have done it better. Or, hey, Mr. Kurtz, that activity did not click with me. I need to learn in a different way. I'm ready to try new things. I'd like to say that I'm relatively open-minded. I want to try a new teaching strategy. I want to try a new teaching tool, which I think is something that will make me strong as a teacher, because when you talk about variability, they say here at Teacher School that students like variability. I don't want my students to come into class knowing that they're doing the same thing every day. I want them to come in and say, oh, wow, Mr. Kurtz is trying something new today. And it also encourages them, hey, you go ahead and try something new, because it is good for you. It's cool. And lastly, I'm ready to work. This is all cute and gorgeous and so forth, but at the end of the day, this is a job that I'm applying for. This is an internship that I'm going to do. I want to go in there. I want to be a good employee. I want to show up on time. Sometimes that's not as easy as it sounds, when you're used to showing up at 8 or 9 o'clock, but I want to get to class. I want to get to school 7:23 every morning. I want to be there before the class starts. I want to be ready to go. I want to be a good employee. I want people to, after this internship, I want the administration to say, oh yeah, Mr. Kurtz, he's a good employee, good teacher, yes, but he's also a good employee, right? Because that's kind of a different skill set if you think about it. Along with my strengths, I've got some goals for my internship. I want to find my style. I put that in italics to emphasize the style, right? I want to find my teaching style. I want to figure out what makes me click with students. I want to figure out what works and what doesn't work. And with that said, again, going back on the theme of I'm here to learn, I want to learn pedagogy, which is like, teaching. I want to learn teaching from my cooperating teachers. Both of my teachers have more than 10 years of experience, which means that I would qualify them as master educators, and they've got stuff to teach me. So I want to learn from them, because I think I would be remiss if I didn't. It would definitely be a waste of experience. And lastly, I want to grow my content knowledge. I don't know everything. Students, I don't know everything. But the thing is that when I'm there, I'm going to learn. Like I said, I didn't know anything about horses or equine science, but now I know stuff about equine science, right? And I want to be just as excited about learning so that my students are also excited about learning, right? Next, I want to tell you about what I've done in these past 4 years. So this is really how I've kind of pruned the old growth to make room for the old growth. And that is, I've done some certifications. I'm a certified program educator for the National Safe Tractor and Machinery Operation Program. So that means that I can teach students that are 14 and 15 years old how to safely operate machinery. In fact, my brother Dale and I went through this program back when we were 14 and 15 years old. Definitely, I think I wouldn't have known, this is kind of a sidebar digression for progression. I wouldn't have known that you weren't supposed to step over the PTO shaft, which rotates, approximately 940 times per minute. I wouldn't have known that you weren't supposed to step over that if it wasn't for this training. Additionally, I'm CPR, AED, first aid certified. So if anything ever happens that I need to do something, I can. And then lastly, I'm Google certified educator level 1, which means that I'm kind of versed, if you will, and at least how to use the Google platforms. I hear chuckles. I've also done some conference and professional development. I've had some awesome professional development opportunities. I'm just going to highlight a few here. I've been to the PA Greenways and Trails Summit, which I went there with a coworker and leader of mine, where we presented a workshop on why it's important to keep youth in the workforce. Yeah, not necessarily ag ed, but it was nice to branch out and also get resources from that space, right? Next, I went to the PA Association of Agricultural Educators Summer Conference. That was this past summer. Awesome way to connect with teachers here in Pennsylvania. I went to the National Association of Agricultural Educators National Convention. That was in New Orleans this year. If you see here, this is my cohort. Rip to my sister Lacey, because she got cut out of that picture. But me, I'm sitting there, so that's cool. And then also I went to an Agri-Science Inquiry Institute, which is where we learned that you can incorporate inquiry-based learning into your classroom. And inquiry-based learning, I'm going to touch a little bit more on this about my passion for that when I talk about my teaching philosophy, but it's where you give a student a challenge question and they get to accomplish that on their own, right? But at the same time, they're learning. It's really cool. And then next, we've got the first year agricultural science teachers symposium, which was at the NAE conference or convention. And it's where we got to network with a bunch of other first year teachers, learn from some master educators into how can we rock this out when we go into our first year teaching. Because if you look at statistics, within the first 5 years of teaching, that's when teachers burn out. It's because it's harder than you realize, I guess. I don't know, I'm not a teacher yet, but that's what the stats tell me. So that symposium there is kind of combating that and getting teachers prepared to go. And so next, I've had some cool work experience. I'm just going to highlight on these right quick. I've worked at Sheets. I've worked at the Penn State Dining Commons. I've worked at Brown Dog Catering, excellent company, by the way. I've worked at, and they're Penn State Catering approved. I worked at TGI Fridays. I've worked at McDonald's. I've worked at the Center for Professional Personnel Development here. I've worked under the direction of Beth Matthew as a PSU Teach Ag Avenger. I love doing that. I've done recruitment and so forth. Here's a picture of my brother and I. As you can see, he's very thrilled, but unfortunately, you have to a moment of silence for my brother because unfortunately he's not here. He's saving the world one burger at a time right now. I've had some career building internships. In 2019, I was a district intern for Congressman Glenn Thompson. This is significant to agriculture because he does sit in the House Ag Committee on a federal level. In 2019, I was a mentor for the Pennsylvania School for Excellence in Ag Sciences program. That's where I met definitely a lifelong friend of mine, Brody Coolidge, as a roommate, and then I got to come back and be a mentor for that program. So you can imagine that was pretty rewarding for me. In 2020, I worked for the grounds and facilities at Shaver Creek Environmental Center. That was so rock and roll. I can't even put my fingers on it because I don't know about you, but I love weed whacking in the woods. And so you really can't get a better job than that. Here in 2021, I worked for the Vermont United States Department of Agriculture, Farm Service Agency. And that was an excellent experience in itself, kind of figure out how can I incorporate teaching into my teaching knowledge into any sort of workspace that isn't the classroom. And I got to figure that out by doing some informal research of sorts. And then lastly, this year I was a Global Teach Ag Special Projects intern where I got to go out to Des Moines, Iowa for the World Food Prize. And I worked with a really great group of educators in this program called the Global Guides. I've got some crowd participation for individuals that were there. It was excellent. So here's some pictures so I can prove that I was there. This is actually a picture of me in Vermont. This is not me working. Again, you get new experiences when you go elsewhere. This is a plug. Ms. Lori Connolly, she works with the College of Ag Sciences in getting students, out of college and into the workforce. And she says that the biggest problem that recruiters have with students at both Penn State and Texas A&M is that they're not willing to leave home. Well, this experience, when I went to Vermont, it taught me that you can leave home and you can find new community. You can have a good time, right? This is me in a Jewish synagogue. Right here, I was painting the children's school because I went to a Shabbat service one day and they were like, hey, does anybody want to, help paint? And I was like, yeah, that's great. And so it was a great opportunity. So that's a plug for trying new things, going new places. Again, this is me at Shavers Creek. They allowed me to kind of integrate all sorts of things in there. This is me like singing a song that I wrote about Shavers Creek, which is really cool. These benches here are also part of my lab integration project that I did for AE 350. It's the first woodworking project that I ever did on myself. It's where my boss and I, we worked together to create a plan, and then I had to make them myself. And so it'd be an excellent project to give students basically 16 feet of board and say, go make a bench out of this. They draw me up a plan and then make it happen. That was probably the requirement for the assignment, was that it would be over 15 or under $15. That would probably be over $15 with the stain and so forth, but the 16-foot board would be around $14 and they could work with that. This is me as a PC's mentor. As you can see, the fedora was in for me. And this is me again in Vermont with a Penn State alum that I got to know up there. So we are Penn State. It's literally everywhere. They weren't lying about that. Oh, and then lastly, this is me with my boy Thomas. We're in Iowa. This is the intern sensation station. We were in charge of like basically keeping the room alive, and we definitely did that very well. So shout out to my boy there. Okay, key coursework. I've done some really great classes here at Penn State, and I'm not just saying that. They definitely didn't pay me to say that because I had to pay to say that. All right, and so Spanish 106, I did Spanish and agriculture. That was with Jaime Garcia, an excellent class because you know, if I had like a couple of years of Spanish, and then I had to improve upon it and also relate that Spanish knowledge to agriculture, which is really important because I have a heart for migrant farm workers, because there's definitely they definitely keep agriculture in America alive, but that's a conversation for another day. INTAG 297, this with Dr. Melanie Miller-Foster, special topics on food security. I really love this. I love this class because I'm really also passionate about food security and feeding the hungry. I think that's something that we should kind of focus on, because when you focus on feeding the hungry in your community, you're making your entire community stronger, not just those individuals. And then lastly, SIAD 140, this was outdoor school. So for a week, I went and hung out with a bunch of students. They were actually from Mifflin County, hung out with a bunch of students at the outdoor school program. And what's really neat is that all three of these courses allowed me and allowed students to show their intelligence in a different way. Right. And so that's actually why I brought my guitar here, because here at Teacher School, they taught us that there's 8 different intelligences, and one of them is musical. So students can express what they know through music. And one thing that I got to do was that in INTAG 297, I wrote a song. We had to say, we had an assignment of why you like to fight hunger, or why is combating food insecurity important to you. And so I wrote that song for INTAG 297. And in Spanish 106, I went to my instructor and I said, I try to make it Spanish, and you know, he helped me out, and it helped me take what I already had, apply it to the relevant coursework, and make it practical to me. And so I was able to write a song about that, which I'm going to share it with you as kind of proof, that the proof in the pudding of that it works, right? And so this is a song that I wrote called "I'm Alive." If you see on the left here, there's Spanish. On the right, there's English. Mis ojos le dirán que tengo hambre, mi alma cantará hasta llenarse, porque sabe que me sirve la bolsa de grano. Es la gracia que todos podemos ver. Estoy vivo, estoy vivo, estoy vivo, estoy vivo. La bolsa de grano es la gracia que todos podemos ver. La bolsa de grano es la gracia que turtle scroll de los And so what that was is an example of how students, when you incorporate the students' passions or the things they care about, they can now learn more. And it seems kind of simple to think about, but when you engage the things that they're intelligent in or the different intelligences, they're able to make that content relevant to them, right? And so that was an example of that. Next and lastly, I'd like to tell you who I will be as a teacher. This is important that I say who I will be because I'm not there yet. I have a lot of growth to make, indicated by the flower. So I want to be a community-focused teacher. And with that said, here's my model curriculum of what that would look like. I'd have an intro to AF&R class, intro to agricultural food and natural resources class, which would lean into a plant greenhouse science, advanced botany. That would be more of like a biology course because I like biology. Again, on the same track, we have animal science, which would be intro to agricultural food and natural resources, then science of animal agriculture, and advanced zoology, which would be like the biology of animals and so forth. And lastly, again, going back to the ag mechanics thing, just because I'm not super into ag mechanics, I might have students that are. And so they start with the intro to agricultural food and natural resources class, go to small gas engines and metal welding and woodworking. But if you notice here, this is only 3 classes. So realistically, this is only like 3 years of teaching, 3 years of learning. So I would also have some electives such as like an SEE practicum, some landscape design, an FFA leadership class. We could have a food science class, things of that nature where the students can supplement that into the curriculum to enrich their learning to become well-rounded learners. Next, I want to be an educator who integrates FFA and SEE into the classroom. For anybody who's not familiar with school-based agricultural education, it's important that all 3 of these components, supervised agricultural experience, FFA, and classroom, are integrated into the program. And that's because SEE, if you think about it, traditionally speaking, that might be like a project. But maybe they can't have show animals or so forth. They can still have a foundational SEE where they just kind of do some research into a certain area of interest to wet their whistle with the content knowledge. We've got FFA where the student focuses on growing their leadership skills and so forth. And then of course, lastly, we have the classroom laboratory. But for FFA to integrate that into my classroom, I would have like an FFA Friday where students can come do like their committee work. Big Spring does that currently. It would be student-led. The chapter would definitely be student-led. Wouldn't be something that I lead because I want the students to have ownership over it, right? And yeah, things aren't going to go perfect, but that's okay because they're students and we're here to learn. And with that said, I can still provide some coaching and mentoring to those students and let them know, you know, hey, maybe we do this differently next time or whatever. With that said, also integrating SAE into my project, into my classroom by having graded record books. Like I said, even if they don't have a project at home, or even if the project is something as small as taking care of their fish, the point and the objective is that the student will be able to take records. And so we want to make sure that they're doing that, have regular SAE visits for students that do have projects. Let's go check it out. I want to go make sure that things are good. Even if I'm not an expert, this is a really great learning experience for me. So I'm going to go check out your beef cow or so forth. And then lastly, SAE be a part of the class. We're going to talk about it. We're going to bring it to real life. If we're talking about beef science or equine science, I know that this individual has equine on their operation. So we're going to talk about that, right? And next, I want to meet the need of diverse learners. And I think I can do this by, again, I want to go back to learning in multiple intelligences. And there's also different domains and modalities to learn in. I want to make sure that students are able to learn however they learn best. And that's going to be a task. You know, it sounds good. It sounds really fancy, but that means that I'm going to have to learn who the student is in order to do that. And I want to do that. I want to reflect on my workforce education coursework. Here at Penn State, we have to do coursework and working with students with special needs, whether it be intellectual or physical, and then also working in diverse, situations. And then lastly, I want to rely on my past work experience. As you see, I've worked in food service. I've worked a couple places. You meet some colorful people by doing that. And so that makes me a little bit more able to mold myself to a student. And so I'd also like to share my classroom management strategies, which is with these classroom consequences, procedures, and expectations. To see these consequences, first thing is going to be verbal warning. Hey, put that down, boy, you know better, you know what I'm saying? And then the second one's gonna be like, call home, because now you know you're in trouble, because I know your mom's gonna be mad about that. Third is detention. You obviously didn't get it the first time, but you know, these wouldn't be punishments, but it's just like, hey, you know, we're trying to stay safe, follow the rules, and keep a good learning environment. And lastly is an office referral. Classroom procedures. So this is the day-to-day thing, so they know what's going on. We got to complete our bell work. We've got to actively participate. We got to clean up our workspace. And then lastly is our teacher dismissal. We want to make sure that students aren't packing up their stuff and leaving just because the bell said so. I mean, yeah, I don't want to hold them up, you know, 2-3 minutes after the bell, but there might be something in that last 10 seconds that they need to hear. So I want them to know, hey, we leave when I say so. And it's not because I'm trying to control you or hold you in the pen, but because I don't want you to miss something. And lastly, classroom expectations. Number one, act professionally. All right, I know that this is the school, but I want to treat you like a young adult and I want to prepare you for the workforce. So when you come in here, act like you're at work, clock in, clock out. Secondly, respect others. That's obviously an easy one to go to, because if there's a discipline issue or behavior issue in class, I can just say, hey, what about number two? You know, you're respecting them. Third, always be safe. No playing games, right? Because at the end of the day, it's all fun and games until someone shoots their eye out. Fourth, we want to follow school policies. That's just a blanket one because, again, I'm working for them. I have to enforce what they say. Fifth is refuse to be ordinary. This is something I'm really passionate about. We're not creating drones. We're creating individuals. We're creating, you know, whoever you want to be. Be as creative as you want. And obviously, you know, as indicated by this presentation, I want to be that model, is that it's okay if you're a little bit different. It's okay if you don't conform to, I don't know, whatever you believe you got to conform to. Just refuse to be ordinary, because that's how the extraordinary is created, right? And then we go on to a recruitment. I want to be someone who focuses on recruitment. This is a video that my classmates, Nathan Warner and Jenny Kibbe, we all made this together. It was like themed like Friends. Y'all know the TV show. And why do we use Friends? Because it's culturally relevant, right? Students are going to know that. It's like, oh, they know me, because they're going to be like, oh, that teacher's woke, man. They know me, you know, like, and so obviously it would help to bring students in on that. All right. Last, not quite last, but this is where it gets personal. This is my teaching philosophy. And it's that in order to succeed, it starts with I believe. I definitely believe that. And it kind of has 3 prongs to it. It's that I want students in my classroom to have an enhanced inquisition. And this goes back to inquiry-based learning of the student. It's more relevant to them if it's their own question. And so it's easier to learn something that you ask a question about, right? If you're eating a McDonald's cheeseburger and you want to know how it's made, you're going to be more inclined to go figure out how it's made, right? Secondly, I want practical information in my classroom. I want my students thinking, how am I ever going to use this? I want to make sure that they know that this information is practical. It's realistic. What I'm teaching you is not just a bunch of stuff that I'm putting on your plate to give you work. This is real, all right? This is something you can take out into the real life. And then lastly, again, a student's belief in themselves. And this goes back to an idea called self-efficacy, where if a student believes that they can do something, then they're going to be more inclined to do that thing, and they're also going to probably succeed more. And so with that said, I want to wrap up with our 3 learning objectives, where we talked about where I'm going, what I've done in the past 4 years, and then who I will be as a teacher. And before I wrap things up, if you remember anything about this whole presentation, it's that I'm grateful. It's because I'm grateful because at one point I was just a blank sheet of paper, just like this slide here. But I met a lot of people along the way, and I've had some really great support systems, as you can see here by these photos. And realistically, we are the product of the people around us in our environment. And I've had a really excellent environment, including my 14 other cohort members who have pushed me to become a better learner, a better leader, and better teacher. I have some really great family. I'm proud to say that I come from a great family of servants, and I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean that in a good way. I come from a family of people that love to serve others. I've got my grandparents here. You know, when it hit the fan and I need a place to go for a month, I went to their house, and they drove me to State College from Belleville every day. That's about a 45-minute drive to make sure I could go to high school. You know, I've got a sister who, anytime I've got an idea, she's not afraid to shoot that sucker down, you know, and like, you know, I've got an uncle that taught me how to improve my love life. He said that he said if I walked around looking like this, that's how you attract a partner. And, maybe it worked. I don't know. And, lastly, I'd be remiss if I didn't include something about my mother. Being a teacher is a hard job. It's definitely hard. But being a widow with 3 kids is a harder job. And so, Mom, you've done an excellent job of preparing me because you're an excellent teacher too. And I can see how those gifts are definitely transcended through the generation. And so that's me. This is where we began. We began as like a freshman kid, but a freshman student coming into Penn State. But now I'm going out to student teach. And so from here on out, for me, it's just ready, set, grow. Thank you very much, and I look forward to your questions.
Justin, we're going to ask that those of you online, if you would be so kind as to put questions you have for Justin in the chat. We will relay those. Kendra will fill here in a moment. Justin, I'll start us off with thank you for your presentation. I'm proud of you and all that you've accomplished. I would love for you to expand more on that notion that you ended your philosophy and expectations with on not conforming and being you or being normal, or being who you are and true to yourself. How do you encourage that in your classroom? How specifically can you elicit that from your students?
Absolutely. I think it definitely starts with, this is any sort of leadership situation. It starts with leading by example. And so I have to do that as well. Sometimes I'm going to be a little bit quirky, sometimes I'm going to be a little bit different, but also it goes with leading by example, but then recognizing when people are kind of thinking outside the box, if you will, when they're being creative and making sure that that student has a positive stimulus to associate with being different, because maybe students don't have that. Maybe they're a little bit shy, or maybe they're a little bit nervous to do that kind of thing. But I want to make sure that I'm leading by example for that, practicing what I preach, and then secondly, making sure that a student gets positive recognition and reinforcement for that kind of behavior.
Justin, you should know that I think it's safe to say that you probably brought tears to the eyes of one Dr. Melanie Miller Foster, who was watching as she prepares to have a meeting here shortly with some of our guests, and was not aware that you had translated that artifact from the food security class to your Spanish class. And a lot of what we talked about for this final presentation is making connections beyond assignments and cut across courses to meet the experiences of professional success. So thank you for that. I want to frame a question that she sent to me. She had a back channel option, I guess. And she said, Justin, you probably know that Melanie and I are big fans, she said, of Ted Lasso. Lasso, one of his lessons is to believe. How will you help your students feel that believe or have a sense of self-efficacy, that they can be a part of the solution to global issues like world hunger?
Yeah.
How are you going to help your kids believe they can make a difference on food security?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And the question is, how am I going to increase my students' belief or self-efficacy in the task of fighting global food insecurity? And I would start by saying to my students that local contributions equal global solutions. And it's because an apple cannot be eaten whole. I mean, I've tried, it can't be done. An apple cannot be eaten whole, but it can be eaten bite by bite. And so, yes, you might not be helping individuals that are in sub-Saharan Africa or in Asia when you go to your local food bank, but you are helping somebody. And if you want belief in something, then if you want to have belief in your ability to accomplish that task, then I would definitely say start with a local contribution in your community, and you'll see that you can make it happen. Because I can even say from firsthand, when you experience that gratitude that someone that is food insecure, that receives some sort of assistance of, whether it's a food bank or supplemental nutrition assistance program, all, both things that I've had to cash in on as we were growing up. When you experience that kind of gratitude, that person will show in that situation. If it's you and them, you're going to be able to believe it. All right. And I know that sounds really abstract and out there, but it's the truth. You got, once you go and do it, you'll see it and you'll believe it. So my answer would be local contributions equal global solutions.
Now I'm going to give you a question for Daniel. That was Melanie's question. Okay. I want you to identify a mistake for public consumption that you've made in the past semester and what you learned from that, and how you're going to change behavior going into your student teaching semester.
Yep.
So to restate the question as you think, an appropriate mistake to share on a live recording in an audience.
He said appropriate,
Made
okay.
In the past 5 to 6 months. And what lesson you learned from that and how it's going to change behavior in spring.
Okay, very good. Dr. Foster said to elaborate on capitals with bold and italicized and underlined appropriate mistake that I made this past semester. I would definitely say thinking that my time, thinking that I had better things to do with my time opposed to when I was attending professional development events and so forth. It's really hard when you go to these things to just get really bogged down because you're like, oh, this is so boring. I could have done this better or whatever, that kind of thing. And so you forget to pay attention and actually glean what's supposed to be there. There is rice still sitting in the field. And so if I would say a mistake that I've made this past semester is thinking that my time was more valuable than it really was when attending professional development seminars.
So take it to the next step. What are you going to change in the next 15 weeks to prevent that from happening again?
What am I changing in the next 15 weeks? Thankfully, we have professional development opportunities coming up this semester. During our internship and so forth, we get to come back to Penn State or wherever to talk about professional development and be present in that kind of thing. One, just because, yes, you want to learn things, but two, because that's just courteous. People are actually putting their legitimate effort into those things. And so if you go there and you be present and you engage, then you're supporting that part of them that wants to support a part of you. So the answer is I want to value my time or not overvalue my time when attending professional development experiences.
We have a question on Facebook from Stacy Ford. It says, how do you plan on motivating a student who isn't motivated or procrastinating, but you know they can do the work?
Okay, how do I plan on motivating a student that is procrastinating and maybe not motivated, but I know they can do the work? And this is a tough one because you can't really, motivation is one of those things that can't be bought or sold. You can't just, force someone to have motivation. You can't buy some magic supplement to motivate someone. But again, it goes back into why are they, you gotta ask yourself, why aren't they motivated? Is this something that isn't relevant to them? Are they like, do they think that they don't have to be learning this? Or is there something going on, back at home where they can't be motivated? Because we know from this thing called Maslow's hierarchy of needs, where a student or a learner needs to have their basic physiological needs met in order to reach that higher level kind of thinking and so forth, self-actualization. And so going back to, is this individual, are they eating right? Do they have needs? Are their needs being met in other ways? So to answer the question, it would be figure out why they aren't motivated. And that would have to happen in some sort of conversation between you and that individual. Hey, why is this not motivating you? Why is this boring? And not even like, oh, there's something wrong with you because you're bored by this, but maybe even put it up with like, can you give me some feedback? I want to be a better teacher. Why, what can I do to make this interesting to you? Not necessarily fun, but interesting to you, right? So definitely answer the question is come back with a conversation with that individual and figure out how can we motivate you and come up with some sort of action plan with them.
So Justin, I want to first thank you for putting us on a roller coaster of emotions through that presentation from cringe to happiness. That was phenomenal. So one thing that I feel like we probably don't train you on enough here at the university level is how to become a member of the community beyond your program. And I think you're well aware of this, right? That an FFA advisor is somebody that is a pillar of the community beyond and outside of the school, from events and to people's houses when you go to do a visit. And so as you think about that and becoming a full-time teacher in less than a year from now, what kinds of experiences and tools do you intend to pick up during your student teaching experience to help better prepare you to become that pillar in that community later?
Absolutely. The question is, ag teachers / FFA advisors are a pillar in the community. And so what tools and assets am I going to pick up while in my student teaching internship to kind of capitalize on that when I go out into the workforce? I can answer this by saying my agri-science teacher in high school, his name was Mr. Paul Heasley. he was an example of what that looked like to be a pillar in the community. Unlike other teachers, ag teachers are unique in the fact that a lot of times you'll find an ag teacher sitting around the dinner table with the family, talking about the student and so forth. And so in my student teaching internship experience, I want to figure out how Mrs. Naylor and how Mrs. Fulton, how do you get involved in the community? And more importantly, maybe not more importantly, this is a relative thing, but important to me, how do you stay involved in the community without selling yourself or giving yourself completely to that community? Basically being able to separate work and life, right? And so I'd look into what organizations are they a part of? What kind of things do they help out with? What community service are they a part of? What communities are they a part of? Are you active in your local church? Are you active in your local Rotary Club? What is it that gets you going to get an appropriate blend of work and life? So to answer the question is, I want to observe by the high efficacy examples that I have from cooperating teachers of what do they do to be a pillar in their community. Yes.
This kind of adds back to another question that was asked, but how do you support a student who may not have the best home life?
Yeah.
Whose family is either not financially stable or maybe it's abusive or just hostile situation. How do you support them and kind of build them up and make them realize that their situation isn't everything?
Yeah.
It gets better, basically.
Right. So how do I put some sunshine into the life of a student who has a bad home life, whether it be financially or they're even unfortunately in an abusive situation? How do I kind of let that student know that there is more to life than just this? You can get out of it. And this is a tough one and something I think that educators all across the country kind of have to face day in and day out, because there's a lot of students in our classrooms that we don't necessarily know their background or whatever, but we can, maybe there's signs or indicators that they have to experience that. And I know this kind of sounds cliche, but you gotta love up on them, obviously in a very appropriate way, right? But we've got to let that student know, like, hey, what you're doing is good. Give them things give them the good bread that they aren't getting at home, right? So let them know that, hey, you're doing good work. Give them positive reinforcement. Let them know that they are valued, because a lot of times students coming from that situation may kind of have issues with thinking that they might depreciate themselves or think that they're less than or so forth. So don't give that student value, because you can't do that. They were born with that. You help them recognize that value within themselves by giving them positive reinforcement and just doing the things that good teachers do. And I think we know that kind of thing by, just fostering, good practices, good behaviors, and also recognizing that sometimes bad behavior is an indication of not so positive home life. So they're not a bad kid. They just, they just need some help, some training, if you will.
So Justin, we've had lots of conversations over the years, and it's been fun watching you develop into the Justin that's in front of us right now. What would you say to freshman Justin as he was getting started, if you could go back?
What would I say to freshman Justin as he was getting started a few years back? You just don't know. I would say, because freshman Justin thought he knew things about life and experience, but freshman Justin didn't know, because it's really easy as we grow, it's really easy for us to get into this state of mind where we know this is the state of our life. We know our plan. We know how things are going to go. But if you asked me 4 years ago, what's your plan? What's your work experience? What's your life experience going to be like? It would be nothing like what it is today. And so I tell freshman Justin, get ready for things to change. Get ready for some really awesome things too, because my life has definitely changed in a lot of ways that I didn't expect, but it's always gotten better. And so get ready for change and get ready for the better.
We have a question from Nick Eisenberg on Facebook. Teaching is a stressful job, and being an ag teacher requires more of you than other teachers. What are you going to do to balance personal and professional roles?
So Mr. Eisenberg, rockstar teacher at Milton Hershey High School, he asked, what am I going to do as a teacher, because it is a stressful job? What am I going to do to adhere to my professional and personal roles? There we go, to balance personal and professional roles. It's going back to, you've got, you as a person, you're kind of like, you can only pour out so much of yourself, and figure out what cups, separate your cups by which ones are personal, which ones are professional, which one can be both. And so this is finding, again, we're going back to being a part of the community. Yeah, it is kind of part of my work to go to the Farm Bureau meeting, but it fills me up too, right? And so you got to figure out, you got to find the balance of what things fill you up and what things do kind of feel like work. Because if they fill you up, then it's not work, right? And so if you want to if you want to balance your professional and personal life, definitely just find things that can easily blend both of them in a comfortable and significantly growing way.
You all join me in congratulating Mr. Kurtz. Justin finished our round of 15 presentations. It's been a very successful week for us here. We want to thank you all for attending. We have one last little business to conduct with Justin before his examination is over. So if you'd like to retire at 2:14, there are refreshments still there. We appreciate your time and all your support of our campus.